promised y'all a live today at our regular time. This is not our regular time. And I do apologize about that. Um, because of where I'm located and I did not bring like lighting equipment with me. I have to rely on sunlight. And it occurred to me the other day after I talked to y'all that going live at 6 and 7 p.m. was not going to work because the sun is not around. So, sorry that we're doing this a little earlier than usual, but for those of you who are here live, I appreciate it. Say hello in the chat. For the folks who are watching the replay, thank you for watching the replay. Glad you tuned in. Um, One of the things that I have been wanting to talk about is or maybe not necessarily talk about, but one of the things that I have noticed and a question I get a lot is about like, am I on track? Am I behind? Am I where I'm supposed to be? So I thought today would be a good day to talk about that, particularly because it's early July. We just had the new year, and I know a lot of people have been thinking about what they're doing, where they want to go, what their goals are, all of that kind of stuff. New year, new me, all that kind of good stuff. So I figured January was as good a time as any to talk about that. So before we do, in case there is somebody new here who doesn't know who I am or what this channel is about, I want to take a moment to welcome them. Welcome to the Picky Girl Nation. I am the Picky Girl in charge. My name is Adelia Aborashade, and about, I guess, 8 years ago, y'all know math is not my strong suit, but let's say 8, 9 years ago, I decided that I wanted to change how I was living my life. And I wanted to live a life that I called all the shots, that I only did things that I wanted to and I enjoyed. And since then, I have done exactly that. And so on this channel, I share what that life looks like, how I created it. I talk about travel, I talk about moving abroad, and I talk about finances because I am a financial educator who believes that everybody should be financially confident in making their decisions so that they can have the life that they want. And money doesn't have to be a thing that gets in the way of that. So, if that sounds like your kind of content, definitely subscribe to the channel. I go live from time to time. I upload videos. I do the whole thing. So if you're not subscribed and you watch this channel normally, generally, you should subscribe too. Okay. All right. So I see everybody in the chat. Sarah has reminded y'all like the video, particularly if you like it. If you don't like it, I guess you could give it a thumbs down. Either way, that information is very helpful with the YouTube algorithm so that YouTube can know who they should and should not show this video to. All right. Now, Sashana, I know I'm stacked at the bottom of the barrel when it comes to comparing my finances to other Americans. All right, so let's dig into that, shall we? Um, what is it they say? Comparison is the thief of joy. Is that what they say? I don't know, but that sounds right. There is that. But honestly, I don't think we should be comparing ourselves. I am acknowledging that as humans, we do that, particularly humans living in a capitalist, white supremacist patriarchy. There's this need to always sort of be in competition with other people so you can only feel good about your position in life if you've got somebody to look down back at. I don't like that. And I really don't think uh we should be comparing ourselves because money is personal. Everybody's journey is different. So comparing yourself to other people, but you don't know anything about their lifestyle. You don't know anything about their history. You don't know anything about their responsibilities. Like that's an unfair comparison. Okay, so I don't put a lot of stock in the articles and videos that talk about like, are you behind? Or yes, you are behind if you have not done X, Y, and Z. Okay, just so we're clear. However, I do understand and acknowledge that there is, I'm not going to say a benefit, but there can be some data gathered by looking at what other people are doing and looking at what you're doing. As long as we don't use that as more of a judge of how successful or unsuccessful, just more of, oh, that's what other people are doing. This is where I am. Okay. Um, and I came across this article on MSN Money that listed out the 5 signs that you're better off than the average American. Because one of the things that I have discovered in a lot of the reading that I do to stay up to date on things is that a lot of our ideas about other people's money and what they're doing with it are wrong. Like, I can't remember the statistic exactly, but somebody was they asked a group of people, like, how many Americans make more than 6 figures? And everybody seems to think everybody is making that kind of money, but here's the thing, everybody is not. So a lot of our ideas about how other people are doing with their money and what they're doing with their money are off basis. So on that wavelength, that thinking, I thought, okay, this could be useful information if we're just trying to really get a true picture of like, okay, what does the average look like? As opposed to in my head, I think everybody is doing X, Y, and Z. Everybody has more savings than me. Everybody has less debt than me. Everybody's got more in retirement than me. Okay. So we're going to go through those. Ba, 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 ba. As soon as I can figure out how to share this. You swear I don't do this often, and I should know how to do this. So please forgive me, y'all, as I take a moment to remember what I called this file so that I can share it with y'all. It is uploading. Again, I don't I don't think we should be comparing ourselves. However, I do think this information could be useful in terms of like fact checking a lot of our personal beliefs. So, okay, I thought I might be asking this Wi-Fi to do too much um, than than it was allowing me to. Okay, we're good to go. All right. So, are you better off than the average American? Um, the first one, is your credit score more than 690? The average credit score for US Americans between 18 and 25 is 679. Uh, for Americans between age 26 and 41, the average credit score is 687. Okay. Now, keep in mind that keep in mind that good credit, generally, the cutoff is about 700. So what that tells us is that the average American doesn't even have good credit. Okay. Now again, we're we're not here to compare and say, "Oh, I'm where I'm supposed to be. I'm not where I'm supposed to be," because 690 as a credit score, that's just a number. You know, we don't know the stories behind that. If you grew up in a household where your parents didn't have their shit together and they put bills in your name and then messed up your credit before you ever turned 18, you're already starting from a huge disadvantage. And then to compare yourself in that situation and say, hey, but I don't have the average credit score. We comparing apples and pomelos. I don't know. So, but if you are interested to see in how you stack up against the average American, remember averages, you're taking high numbers, you're taking low numbers, and you're coming out in the middle. Okay. So the average credit score is 690. And like I said, that's not even considered good credit. If that's one of your goals, we could have a whole nother conversation about whether or not you should be pursuing good credit. All right. Do you have $2,000 in cash? Um, According to, you know, conventional wisdom, you should have at minimum 3 months expenses saved in an emergency fund in case something happens, like there's a polar vortex and your pipes freeze. I'm talking about folks in Texas right now. Um, but we know that 47% of Americans cannot cover a unexpected $2,000 expense. Okay. Um, we know that 47 America, I said that wrong. Only 47% of Americans actually have 3 months expenses in their emergency fund. Um, but even then, the average of those accounts is only about $2,000. So again, where reality and what we're supposed to be doing, and I'm saying that in quote, um, it doesn't match up. When I say cash, I don't mean like cash in your pocket. I mean, if something were to happen, you could immediately get the cash. You've got liquid $2,000, not in stocks, not tied up in a CD. Well, I don't know. Maybe we would count the CD because that is a cash equivalent. But I do not mean like cash in your hot pocket, not physically at your house, but um that you're liquid, as opposed to, oh, I could sell this car sitting out in my garage. That is not liquid. The furnace man needs to be paid tonight. He can't wait on you to sell the car before you pay him. That's what I mean. Um, Ooh, this is a good question, Sarah. How much is too much liquid cash to have available? Um, with what interest rates are doing right now, if you have a lot in cash, you're missing out on that. Remember that inflation is a thing. So you want to hedge your bets and keep your cash in a high yield savings account that's going to pay you somewhere between 4 and 5% interest. To me, having it in the high yield savings is still considered cash because you can easily access that money. Um, how much money should you have physically sitting at your house? What can you afford to lose if the house catches on fire? That's what I think about that. Dr. K, you are 100% correct. Most people are one paycheck away from being ass out. Yeah. Um, when we talk about people living paycheck to paycheck, like this is a situation that if something were to happen, let's say there was a payroll glitch and they did not get a check issued this week, they would not be able to buy food. They would not be able to pay the rent or what have you. It means like if you're somebody who's like, oh yeah, that's right. Today's the 25th. We get paid on the 10th and the 25th. Ah, that's right. I get paid today. If you're like that, you are not living paycheck to paycheck. But way too many of us are. Okay. This is all too common, particularly, for our community where you have no idea, especially if you're coming up in a home where folks are not talking about money, they're not talking about credit. You go out into the world and have no idea the poor state that your credit is in because of your parents' misdoings. Okay. So this is a good point, Sashana. It's living check to check. We always assume that's poor people, quote unquote, poor people. Okay. That's a loaded word. But actually, a big chunk of the folks who, if they miss one paycheck, as Dr. K said, will be asked out, are people who make a lot of money. And you mentioned Billy Porter. Like, absolutely. This again plays into what I was saying about we have these ideas about what other people are doing with their money and how they're handling their money, and we don't know them. We're not in a business like that. So he probably was not alone. There were probably quite a few of them, particularly with the length of time that the strike went on. So it doesn't have to be just quote unquote poor people who are living check to check. There are people who make in excess of six figures who, if they miss one check, it all comes down. Okay. So we talked about credit score, we talked about cash, like to handle an emergency. Now, I did wonder about, would we include, like, you have the ability, an emergency happens and you have the ability to put that $2,000 emergency on a credit card, you know, would that count? And I don't know. I don't know. Because ideally, if you've got the space on your credit card and there is no existing balance and you can then pay that credit card off, that's not a horrible emergency savings strategy, but I don't think that's what they were talking about. Okay. All right. All right. Speaking about credit card debt, total credit card debt, is it less than $7,000? Okay. Lending Tree did a survey. No, they did a study. The average American has $6,993 of credit card debt. Now, honestly, that number is lower than I expected. However, the way we've been spending money, and I'm talking we collectively, uh, in 2023, all of the data isn't in yet, but in 2023, credit card debt total for US Americans went up by $38 billion and is now over $1 trillion. So the way we were spending money last year, 2023, it is expected that the average amount of credit card debt is going to be in excess of this. And um, if we think about what interest rates are on credit cards, because most people I know, including myself, the interest rate on their credit cards are double digit, like 20% and above. So carrying that kind of debt, paying that kind of interest, um, it's not great. It's not great. But if you have less credit card debt than $7,000, you are doing better than the average American. Um, okay. Oh, I think I said this wrong. It was $2,000 to handle an emergency. Now, exclusive of an emergency fund. Not talking about money you've put aside to handle in case something goes wrong, but more like general savings. If you Do you have more than $4,500 in your general savings? That might be for a future new car, that might be for a down payment on a house, that might be, your fund for that BBL you've been waiting on. If you have more than $4,500, you are doing much better than the average American. Um, Only 35% of America, well, I'm saying this wrong. 35% of Americans have less than $1,000 in savings. Okay. Hey, I'm not judging anybody on what their savings or spending goals are. If it's a BBL, if it's a new car, it's a house, that's your business. Okay. I just want you to pay for it responsibly and not go into debt behind it. um, bu- 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 so yeah, 35, only 35% of Americans have more than $1,000 saved. So that gives you some idea kind of how, we're doing collectively. It's not great. It's not great. All right. And lastly, retirement. The average American, remember this is everybody, old people, young people, everybody in between. Do you have $30,000 saved for retirement? Um, if if you are in your 30s and you have more than $30,000 saved in retirement, you are in a better position with your retirement savings than most people your age. Now, I know my channel skews a little older, but in case there's some Gen Zs and some young millennials, if you are between age 25 and 34, the median amount people in that age group have in their employer plans is $11,357. But if you are somewhere between, let's say, 35 and 44, the median balance is like $28,300. Okay. So we don't have a lot saved for investment. And some of you might be like, but girl, $30,000, that's a lot. Um, no, it's not. No, it's not. We know, all the data has told us, all of the studies have told us, Americans are not saving enough for, um, y'all know I don't really like to talk about retirement, but for that point in time when they no longer work, whenever that happens to be, we're not saving. I did a whole video on why we're not saving. It is difficult to save in this capitalist hellscape that we live in. Okay. Um, so I share that number for a couple of reasons. One, I know a lot of us feel like I am so behind on my retirement savings. Are you behind, or will you have to just retire later than you initially planned? But what you can also see is that most of us don't have enough money. Okay. Um, so I don't know, maybe it makes you feel a little better to know that you are not alone on that. But or maybe you're like, "Oh my gosh, I have my retirement accounts have several commas. I'm doing great." Okay? Either way, the thing here's Greta. Either way, the thing that we have to remember is what these numbers do not tell us. They don't tell us anything about people's income. They don't tell us anything about investing strategy, because if you've got 30,000 in your retirement fund, but you've only had a rate of return like 1 or 2%, that's not great. Doesn't tell us anything about people's level of financial literacy, their lifestyle choices, how they're spending, none of that. But what I do hope you take away from this information is maybe it brings your idea of what the average is more into alignment with reality. The point of today's conversation is not to say, yes, you are ahead, no, you are behind, but it is more to kind of correct our idea about like how other people are using their money and what they're doing with that money. Well, um, I just wrapped Right before I came here to Oaxaca, I just wrapped up the Get Started Investing Challenge. Um, I don't know when I'm gonna be hosting another one, but if you are like, I got this account, I got this Fidelity account, I got this 401k, I don't know what's going on, I don't understand it. Get on the mailing list right down here at the bottom. There is the URL for the mailing list. It is in the description of the video as well. That way, the next time I host a challenge, when Financial Confidence Academy opens for enrollment, you will be the first to know so that you can get your financial life together. Um, Going back to see if I missed any questions. And I'm glad you said this, Blissful. I'm in my 40s, so no worries. I'm sure. Oh, you say you have plenty of time to invest. I would say you're in your 40s. You still have plenty of time. Y'all, life expectancy is going up. You are going to be around for a lot longer, you know, barring anything unusual. So, there is no such thing as it is too late for me to invest. Um, y- Investing is always better than not investing. So, if you're not on the mailing list, um, get on it. These statistics, Tatia, are from a variety. I'm going to link the article that I got them from on MSN, but they pulled from like Lending Tree and various credit reporting agencies and places like that that had done a variety of studies, and they pulled them together into this list. And again, this is average American. Now, if you, and not you, but if y'all are like, I know what Adelia is saying about how I should not be comparing myself to other people, but I want to know what is it for my age group. You can do some Googles and find that data out there. There's actually, do I still have the article up? There was one I was looking at that was like retirement fund balances based on age. Um, I mean, it's just as depressing as this. Again, people don't have enough money saved. Life is getting more expensive. I was just looking at here. I think I can share this with y'all. I was just looking at somebody shared this the other day. This is an article that CNBC Make It did. Basically, it's how much does it cost to retire in each of the states. I'm assuming that y'all can see that. It says that I am sharing it with you. Okay. So it talks about, wait, where's the summary? Okay. 16 of the US states, you need to have at least a million to retire. I just find this interesting. Not so much am I focused on what is the minimum you need for a 25-year retirement and 30-year retirement. What I find interesting is the annual retirement expenditures, because how much money you are going to need when you stop working is totally dependent on what are your expenses, how are you spending money. So I'm curious about where those numbers came from, because um you know I, depending on the age of someone, like what exactly is contributing to those costs. um Retiring in the US seems like bleeding money. It does, and that's one of the reasons I won't retire in the United States, is because it is so expensive. Now, the other thing I want to mention before I hop off of here, this idea that I won't have $1 million. Remember, y'all, this is why you invest. Whether you are in the stock market, whether you are investing in real estate, because again, you can either have a certain amount of money invested from which you pull, or you can have cash flow coming in. If you've got multiple rentals that provide, because okay, let's say it was like $50,000 a year. Good grief, y'all are gonna make me do math online. I am going to pull up a calculator so I don't embarrass myself. But let's say it was $50,000 uh, a year. That's a little bit over 4,100, $4,200 a month. If you had three properties that were cash flowing $2,000 each in rent, you're covering those expenses. So one, I don't want us to get super caught up in like, oh my gosh, $1 million is so much money. How am I going to get that? Because you could cash flow to cover your expenses. And two, if you are invested, your investments can grow to $1 million without you having to do all that much work. Okay. New life curator. I don't want to hear this talk. It's not about you being behind. It's about you need to get a good handle on what are my expenses, what is my timeline, how much money do I need, what am I doing? It's not a race, y'all. It's not a competition. Okay. All right. So that's all I have for today. Um, I hope I will be back live with y'all next Wednesday. But honestly, it might be earlier in the day so that the lighting situation is a little better. But I didn't want to not come on and y'all be like, but she was here Monday and said I'm gonna be live on Wednesday. So um what do I need to tell you? Oh, just reminder. If you want to know, next time I'm offering the challenge when my financial literacy course opens and any of that kind of stuff, make sure that you are on the mailing list. And I feel like there's something else I need to tell y'all, but it'll just have to wait. Bye, guys.